1:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here is the news. Edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Indrani Senanayake. The headlines. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena says that another step will be taken to carry out development activities this year. A project to build 10,000 houses for the plantation sector workers under a grant from the Government of India will be launched today. The State Bank has issued a 5 billion rupee loan to a businessman without the assurance of a surety. It has been reported that water levels in the Mausakale and Castlereagh reservoirs have decreased considerably. In foreign news, Israel sets March deadline for Gaza ground offensive in Rafah. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena says that another step will be taken to carry out development activities this year. An immense task has been entrusted to the state workers when implementing development programs. He made these remarks at a ceremony to present appointment letters to the groups who have been selected from the examination for state service held at Temple Trees. 250 people have been given appointment letters. A project to build 10,000 houses for the plantation sector workers under grant from the Government of India will be launched today during a ceremony at the President's office under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Under the first phase, 1,300 houses are to be constructed at 45 plantation estates in 10 districts. The President will join the launch online. All houses are expected to be completed by August this year. The State Bank has issued a 5 billion rupee loan to a businessman without the assurance of a surety. Although it was issued some years ago, the loan has still not been paid back. 25 billion rupees was added as an interest to this loan. Justice Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said a case has been filed against this businessman. It has been revealed that the State Bank has cut billions of rupees for loans of businessmen as bad loans. The bank has acted in an irresponsible manner. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, and we continue with local news. It has been reported that water levels in the Mausakale and Castlereagh reservoirs have decreased considerably due to the prevailing dry weather conditions existing in the Central Hills. Accordingly, as of today, the water level of the Mausakale reservoir has decreased by 13 feet and 5 inches, and the Castlereagh reservoir water levels have decreased by 8 feet, engineers have stated. Chief incumbent of the Mihintale Raja Mahavihare, the Venerable Vallava Hangunavave Dharmaratana Nayakathera, says that the JVP has no right to assume power to build the country, as they destroyed our culture, religions and ethics during the past period. The present generation is still suffering from fear psychosis after the insurgency. No one can forget the harm that had been done by the LTT terrorists and the JVP. He made these remarks while participating in the Dasadesin Hatha program of the SLBC this morning. And that ends the local segment of news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
We now take a look at the main news story. A super-luxury passenger ship, Silver Moon, carrying 516 tourists from the Maldives, had reached the Colombo port. It came under the flagship of Bahamas. The crew of the ship comprises 400 members. The tourists are scheduled to visit Colombo and the Gold areas and will depart for the Maldives this evening, and that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
We now take a look at Watchlight. Chairman of the Organization to Safeguard the Public, Asela Sampath, has requested the President to take measures to reduce up to 20 rupees from the 50 rupees that is being presently charged from the public when using public toilet facilities. The contract of the maintenance of these toilets have been given to a private sector. Many passengers have faced difficulties to use this facility, and that came to you in Watchlight. Coming up, world news. First, the headlines. Israel sets March deadline for Gaza ground offensive in Rafah. More than 60 shot dead in Highland region. Mexico protesters in mass rally against electoral changes. Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz has warned that unless Hamas frees all hostages held in Gaza by the 10th of March, an offensive will be launched in Rafah. It is the first time Israel has said when its troops might enter Gaza's overcrowded southern city. Global opposition is growing to such an attack in Rafah, where some 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering. Earlier, the UN Public Health Agency said a key Gaza hospital had ceased to function following an Israeli raid. The World Health Organization said it had not been allowed to enter Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis, north of Rafah, to assess the situation. At least 64 people have died in an ambush in Papua New Guinea's remote highland region. The victims were shot dead during a tribal dispute in the Enga province over the weekend, a national police spokesman told the BBC. The highlands area had long struggled with violence, but these killings are believed to be the worst in years. An influx of illegal firearms have made clashes more deadly and fueled a cycle of violence. Police started collecting bodies at the scene near the town of Wabag, roughly 600 kilometers northwest of the capital, Port Moresby. Huge crowds have rallied in Mexico's capital protesting against proposed changes to the electoral authority ahead of June's presidential elections. The Mexico City government said some 90,000 people had turned out in the city of Zocalo Square. The rally organizers said the figure was much higher. The opposition accuses President Andrés Manuel López Obrador of trying to weaken the National Electoral Institute, an autonomous, non-partisan body. He says the INE is biased and corrupt. Since his victory in 2018 presidential elections, Mr. Lopez has been pushing for a reform of the INE, which says he will save taxpayers $150 million a year by drastically reducing the agency's staff. To end this bulletin of world news, the headlines again. Israel sets March deadline for Gaza ground offensive in Rafah. More than 60 shot dead in Highland region. Mexico protesters in mass rally against electoral changes. That ends this bulletin of world news. We now take a look at development news. The Railways Department is constructing the two-way railway line section from Gattam Bay to Sarasavi-Yoyana. In addition, the construction work of the bridge at the B364 road began today. It will take a period of 6 months to complete the construction work, and that was development news. Moving on with sports news. The second T20 match between the Afghanistan and Sri Lanka will be played at the Dambulla International Stadium at 7 p.m. today. The Sri Lanka Cricket Institute said that all tickets for the third and final match have already been sold out, and that was sports news.
Go ekak tiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු වීර හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න. The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The Minister of Agriculture and Plantation Industries, Mr. Mahinda Amaravira, says that in addition to paddy cultivation and other additional crops in our country, the attention of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has been focused on the development of tea, coconut and the rubber plantation crops. And that was Business News.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak tiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු වීර හැබැයි කරන්න NSB Itru account. NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
We now take a look at economic news. The United Heritage Group, represented by Alexander Borodich, leading innovator in blockchain technology, has completed several meetings with the Sri Lankan government officials to evaluate the current needs in blockchain technology and tokenization of real-world assets during the visit to Colombo this week. During these meetings, it was discussed that the tokenization process of real-world assets backed by the physical assets in the immediate future should also be evaluated and monitored by the regulator, while the company is launching the digital financial products for the Sri Lankan market. And that was economic news.
Weather report.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. A few showers may occur in the eastern and Uva provinces in the morning. Showers or thunder showers may occur at a few places in the Sabragama province in the evening or at night. Mainly fair weather will prevail elsewhere. Fairly strong winds of about 30 to 35 kilometers per hour can be expected at times on the eastern slopes of the Central Hills and in the northern, north-central, northwestern, Uva, southern and the eastern provinces and in the Matale and Kandy districts. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in the western and Sabragama provinces during the morning hours. To end this afternoon's news broadcast, we take a look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena says that another step will be taken to carry out development activities this year. A project to build 10,000 houses for the plantation sector workers under a grant from the Government of India will be launched today. The State Bank has issued a 5 billion rupee loan to a businessman without the assurance of a surety. It has been reported that water levels in the Mausakale and Castlereagh reservoirs have decreased considerably. And in foreign news, Israel sets March deadline for Gaza ground offensive in Rafah. And that ends this afternoon's news broadcast. This is Radio Sri Lanka. And of course, it's time for me to exit the studio. But of course, your regular host Niranjana Besundara is not here. But in his place, we have a smiling lady. Yes, indeed. I can see all the 36 pearly whites smiling at me. Hesha Samat will take over, and of course in a short while from now it will be lunchtime music. So for all of you who are sitting down to enjoy your lunch, we just hope that you will also enjoy music in the background. And of course we have the request program coming up from 2 to 4 o'clock. That's right. So Heshma will be conducting the program until 4 o'clock. So I wish you all the very best, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy yourself tremendously. There's no doubt about that, because we always enjoy ourselves just sitting behind the microphone in Radio Sri Lanka. So all the best to you, Heshma. I wish you nothing but the very best indeed, and I hope you have a great week ahead, and every single one of you tuned in to Radio Sri Lanka.
Thank you so much, Indrani. That was Indrani Senanayaka bringing you the news in detail. And it's my pleasure to be in your presence, Indrani, exchanging smiles and conversations, and happy to be behind the microphone as well.
Yeah,
as
absolutely so. Absolutely so. So I wish you all the best. And it's time for me to say goodbye to you and to everybody else tuned in. Bye-bye.